Okay, hello everybody and welcome. My name is Angela Priestley. I am the co-founder of Agenda Media, which is the publisher of Women's Agenda. I am at home in Sydney with 3 children in another part of the house with my partner who's thankfully at home as well. And I'm sure many of you are at home yourselves. So we do have the Q&A box that will be open. So feel free to shout out and let us know where you are at the moment, what kind of chaos, what kind of things are going on in your house at the moment that's hopefully enabling you just to take a little bit of time out to share this webinar. So on the line, as you can see, we've got Margie there as well. Hello, Margie. Margie's in Singapore. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
So welcome to this Women's Agenda webinar supported by Wiley. And we've put this together very quickly, and it's really an extension of a series that we launched with Wiley last year called the Thought Leaders Hub, where we feature different leading authors on a range of different topics related to leadership, finance, personal development, entrepreneurship, and more. So, of course, all that type of content is changing rapidly as we adjust to the circumstances that we're all in right now, which those circumstances are obviously different for each and every one of us. But those circumstances, I think, are also similar in some ways, and the future has never really felt more precarious and more uncertain. I think our courage and the need to trust ourselves is being called on in sudden and unimaginable ways that none of us could have expected at the beginning of this year. We're facing challenges on multiple fronts to our health, our families, and our financial security. And we're also being called on to do things like we've never done before, like homeschooling, which I've been attempting to do pretty poorly this morning. So I'm thrilled to have our first author with us today, Margie Worrell, who'll be exploring how to tap into the power of resilience and courage amid the uncertainty of COVID-19. Margie's just published her latest book, You've Got This, The Life-Changing Power of Trusting Yourself, with tips and ideas that have taken on a new meaning right now. So I first met Margie a few years back when I interviewed her on the topic of resilience, and I've been following her work and writing ever since. A lot of it that we've been lucky enough to publish on Women's Agenda. We actually had a conversation a few weeks ago for another story where we talked about the idea of sharing some of her knowledge at that time with our audience, given what's going on with COVID-19. But Margie has actually since shared with Women's Agenda how the pandemic has actually personally impacted her family after her husband tested positive for the virus. Also little things about how Margie's you've been separated from your kids who are now in Singapore. So I know it hasn't been an easy time for you, but we did speak earlier and you mentioned that your husband is feeling a lot better now.
Yes. Wouldn't say better, but definitely not feeling as bad as he was 2 weeks ago. So yes. Thanks, Sam.
Which is excellent news. So Margie grew up as the big sister of 7 on a small dairy farm in rural Victoria. She's travelled all over the world and run businesses in different countries while bringing up her 4 children. She uses her background in business, psychology and coaching to determine what holds people back. And she's worked with clients including NASA and Salesforce, Deloitte, Google, and more. So I will hand over to Margie. But first of all, if you do have, like I say, questions, comments, you can start putting them in that question and comment box. And we will go through some of those towards the end of Margie's session. She'll be talking for around 30 minutes. I can see Fiona already at home in Dubbo. Natalie, hi there from Melbourne with 3 kids. She's currently cleaning their rooms. That's great multitasking there. So keep them coming. And I'll hand over to you now, Margie.
Thanks, Ange. Well, hello, everyone. And thanks for joining us today. Yes, what a topic. It's so relevant, obviously, for all of our lives right now. How can we be more resilient? And how can we have more courage in the midst of this just extraordinary time that is challenging everyone in terms of being our best selves? And one of the things when it comes to resilience, we often think of some people as more resilient and others as less resilient. But I guess the good news is that it doesn't matter what your personality type is, whether you're someone that tends to be more of a worrier or more anxious, everybody has the ability to be more resilient. And it's not about what you have, it's actually about what you do. So what I'm going to be sharing with you today, I guess 5 kind of core principles, and I'm drawing from the work in You've Got This, but also just in my experience across the board over the many years where I've had to practice lots of resilience myself, and in recent years dealing with a lot of uncertainty. I guess it's why I actually even wrote my last book, because I've dealt with massive disruption on the family front and enormous uncertainty in terms of what country, what continent I'll be living in. And so all of that is what I've been really drawing from for myself in the last 2 weeks, in particular, since my husband landed in from the United States and within a day was not feeling very well. Within 2 days was off to get tested, and I haven't seen him now for nearly 2 weeks tomorrow. And I've been in a strict quarantine since then. So I'm speaking to you from quarantine land right now, and I've got just over 24 hours left till I can leave my apartment. So the first slide, and Ange, I think you're going to manage the slides. And as I go through these principles, great. You know, yes, resilience isn't what you have, it's what you do. And I think right now, and I can see the formatting's a bit funny there, but as a quote actually by Viktor Frankl, and that is that right now, when there's so much that's outside of our control, and that's unnerving, because as human beings, we like to be able to think we can make plans on a future we can predict. We're wired for certainty. We're wired to want to have control and feel like we've got control. And right now there's so much that's outside of it. And it's why I think right now we all have to look into ourselves for the security that we're seeking, for the certainty that we're seeking, and look at what is it that we can do for ourselves that will help us weather this time that much better. And, you know, there's so much research that's been done on resilience. And at the core of it is that people who can build their resilience, who can practice optimism, who can connect to a sense of calm and not be stressed out, they weather life's difficulties better and they emerge out the other side of them better off. And all of us right now are being challenged, but there's things that we can do that will help us get through this period. And that's not to say without any stress or without any moments of angst or overwhelm. I've had my share in even recent days, but not being consumed by it. And as you know also well yourself, you know, when we get totally stressed out, totally anxious, totally overwhelmed, and we kind of get really negative around things, that actually isn't good for our immune systems. It's not good for our health, and it doesn't help us respond as constructively and as creatively and as courageously as we can. So first key point I really want to make here is the importance of just surrendering what's outside your control right now, surrendering that resistance. Angie, if you could move the slide. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's easy at times like this to go, it shouldn't be this way. I shouldn't have to be homeschooling my kids. I shouldn't be, you know, I know for me, I was supposed to be setting off right now on a month-long speaking tour of the US. Suddenly all my income stream just went cancel, 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 cancel. I'm sure many of you are dealing with a lot of that as well. And it's easy to find ourselves sort of in that fighting reality. It's like, you know, it shouldn't be this way. I don't want it this way. And this is where it's so important to just go with what is. And, you know, I've got the visual there of the river, the current flowing. You know, don't waste your energy swimming upstream right now. Instead go, okay, I need to just go with, I don't know quite where things are going to land 1 month from now, 3 months from now. But when we're not railing against how things are, it actually frees up a lot of energy to go, okay, what's the smartest way for me to channel my resources, my time, my talents right now? And so if you find yourself feeling anxious or annoyed or irritated or overwhelmed, just pay attention to those emotions and do what's called attend and befriend. And that's where, you know, even in recent days myself, I've had a few times where I've just felt a bit overwhelmed. My oldest son is in New York right now, holed up in his apartment with some friends. He's at college there. And every now and again when I find a little that anxiety kind of coming up, just stopping, taking a few big deep breaths and just noticing how you're feeling and embracing that vulnerability too. Being brave and being strong and being resilient isn't mutually exclusive from feeling vulnerable and having moments of anxiety and moments of overwhelm. That is what it is to be human. And when we embrace the whole spectrum of human emotion and allow ourselves to feel it fully, then it doesn't own us. And so whatever you're doing today, if you're cleaning your house, maybe this moment is not the moment to stop, but I really encourage you just to stop regularly through this period and just pay attention to how you're feeling. Just notice how you're feeling and embrace all the uncomfortable emotions and just sit in a place of curiosity and go, oh, isn't this like right now we're all having a really interesting life experience. You know, we are all having an experience. I mean, and all of us will be experiencing it differently. That's unlike anything we've ever known. Every now and again, I've woken up and gone, is this real? Like, am I actually in the circumstance I'm in now? And I'm sure I'm not alone in having those moments. And so just embrace that discomfort and remember that we don't grow in life from the times when the water's calm and it's all easy going. We grow when we actually are uncomfortable. And right now, we're all having wonderful opportunities to grow in who we are actually as human beings, to deepen our own dimension of our own humanity and to experience life differently than we have until now. And so I just encourage you, and as you kind of find yourself going, oh, you know, and you have those angsty thoughts or you're feeling whatever you're feeling, just allow it in. And the only way out is through. Every emotion is valid. Your fear is valid, but it's about not being consumed by it. And so next slide, Ange, if you could kind of move on.
Yeah, I'll get to the next slide. I just want to note out just where everyone is, because you made that point about that sort of this collective experience and the curiosity around it as well. And I can just see people tuning in from like Seattle, from Melbourne, from different parts of Canada, from Newcastle here in Australia, from Singapore, and people are saying very similar things, you know, about what they're doing right now. They work from home, they've got their kids in the background, they're homeschooling, and I just think what an amazing time in that sense that we can all kind of picture each other at that point. There's something very human and incredible, and to be curious about there when you think about the fact that so many of us are experiencing this in our own way, but in a similar imaginable way as well. So I'll move on to your next point.
Yeah, and I think just with that though, on the kids, obviously my children are older now and I'm not dealing with little kids underfoot, and I can only imagine when I had 4 under 6 what it would have been like to have tried to have, because I was on the opposite of a homeschooling mum. I'm like, put them off, and you know, as soon as they're old enough to go off and have a bit of time in preschool or whatever. And so I can imagine that's not easy. And remember, your kids one day are going to remember this time too. They're going to go, oh, wow. And there's going to be moments where you're not the loving, patient mother that you would like to be, and be kind to yourself. I think this is a time for self-compassion as well, for being kind to ourselves in those moments when we do lose our temper, when we are irritable. And let's face it, when we're all kind of cooped up together, it's hard to feel fantastic all the time. So I think that's important. And excuse me, Jill Bolte Taylor is a neuroanatomist. And when it comes to feeling our feelings, she said, you know, even holding on, if you find yourself feeling something, and I've done this quite a bit, take a few big deep breaths, notice where you're feeling it in the body, put your hand on that place and just breathe into that fear wherever it's constricting in your body for about a minute, 90 seconds. And it might not completely go away, but it'll loosen its grip, because fear, tension, anxiety, all of that lives in our bodies. And so there's saying our issues are in our tissues, and just stopping to literally breathe sometimes. You know, just after Andrew was hospitalized, I felt a little bit like a car was parked on my chest, and I would literally just stop and take a few big deep breaths, because when we're in that fight, flight, freeze mode, our breathing is often very shallow. We're not doing that deep diaphragmatic breathing. And it's really easy right now to be in that stress mode. And so the more often we can stop, take a few mindful breaths, just notice where we're feeling tight and anxious, breathe into it, be kind to it, it's there, feel it all the way through. It helps to release its hold on us. Which brings me to the second point, which is really about fear and how our brains are wired to focus more on what could go wrong than on what might go right. We are twice as sensitive to potential losses as we are to potential gains. We can tell that from MRI scans of the brain, which parts light up when we're looking at potential loss, and even doing a coin throw. And so given that, when anxiety dials up, as it does when there's a lot of uncertainty, we tend to move from like forecasting a future into fear casting, and we come up with worst case scenarios. And right now, of course, it's pretty easy to go, oh my God, we're living in a worst case scenario, right? But just be careful, because when we get stuck in fear, like fear is a completely legitimate emotion. It alerts us to danger, to potential threats to our safety, our survival. And that's okay. That's good. That's healthy. And in fact, you could argue that over the last few months, some people needed to be more scared of this virus than they were. They weren't afraid enough, or they may have put measures in place that could have prevented it getting to where it's got to in terms of how it's impacting our lives. So fear isn't bad. We're not talking about getting rid of fear, but it is about learning to manage and master fear so that fear isn't mastering us. And at times like this, fear dials up. And I know this was a column that Ange published in Women's Agenda. When fear runs high, the need for courage runs higher. And that is reeling in our fear so that the fear isn't running the show, that we're going, yes, I'm aware of threats. I'm completely alert to what's going on around me. But fear isn't making all the decisions for me, that we're able to make objective, rational decisions. And we've seen with the craziness around stocking up on toilet paper that people, when fear takes over, panic and act irrationally. And it undermines our decision making. It clouds our thinking. And of course, it also has a negative impact on our immune function too. So stress is one of the biggest reasons people ever end up at the doctors to begin with. Stress totally undermines our immune function. And so right now, I kind of think of it as fear like every emotion. Think of it as a cloud going across the sky. You know, we have these moments, but make sure the cloud keeps moving and doesn't like set up permanently above your head, because that's when we get stuck in this state of paralyzing anxiety, which doesn't serve you. And so UCLA did a study, but it's something I've in my coaching training, remember years ago, when we name an emotion, that it helps to tame the emotion. And so for you, just even as I said a minute ago, stopping, just pausing, just name how you're feeling. You know, I'm feeling anxious, or I'm feeling overwhelmed, or I'm feeling a bit scared, or I'm feeling really sad. You know, my kids have missed out on these opportunities, or I've missed out on these opportunities. But when we name an emotion, it actually helps it deactivates the part of the brain, that fight, flight, freeze part of the brain, and actually activates the prefrontal cortex, which is the thinking, that executive functioning part of the brain that helps us to think more clearly. Whereas when fear is taking over, it's interesting, studies show that actually it literally narrows our peripheral vision, that we can't see beyond what's immediately in front of us. And so that reduces the range of different possibilities and ways we can respond to the situation at hand. It stops us being as creative. It stops us thinking of other solutions, because all we're doing is just honing in on this immediate, I might lose my income, my house might, we get very focused on what we can lose right in front of us. And so just on that, challenging what you're focusing on, and just focus more on well, what can I do here? Instead of focusing on all the problems, focus on solutions, and avoid getting caught into what I've seen a lot of people doing is talking up stress. Oh my God, it's so stressful right now. I feel so stressed. It's all because that just makes you more stressed. And it's actually stopping you from going, okay, what is the most creative, courageous way for me to deal with this moment, this situation right now?
I had my 6-year-old son tell me that he was stressed yesterday, which I think indicated obviously that homeschooling is going very well in our house. So moving on to...
And just recognizing that, with fear, all emotions are contagious, right? And so fear is very contagious. Stress spreads, and we can spread stress around us. And obviously from a parenting perspective, our kids will pick up on our stress like that. Even if we're not saying I'm stressed, they're picking up on that energy. So I think we have to be really careful as parents to be careful about what emotions we're spreading with others, which brings me to this concept of self-certainty, and at the core of it is about being grounded in ourselves, in our innate capacity to deal with the challenges that come. And I guess this lays at the heart of You've Got This, which is about the life-changing power of trusting in ourselves. When the storms blow hard, oaks take deeper roots. And all of us right now have to be more rooted into a foundation of our own capacity to deal with what's coming at us. And we don't even know what's coming, right? Because fear, we just project all these worst case scenarios. We don't know what's coming. But when we're operating from a place of being really grounded with self-certainty, I don't know what's happening around me. I don't know what's coming. There's so much uncertainty. But I am certain that I have the ability to deal with this. And I am certain that I'm going to be aligned with my values and my principles. And I'm not going to let everything else around me determine how I'm going to deal with this moment in time. And I think there's an analogy that ships don't sink because of the water that's around them. Ships sink because of the water that gets in them. And right now we're surrounded by a lot of negativity. We're surrounded by, our future is filled with uncertainty. And yeah, we don't know what's coming. And if we let all of that get in us, then that keeps us from actually responding as well as we can. And so this idea of self-certainty, Stanford University did a study, and what they found was that people who are very grounded in intrinsic values, so compassion or community, integrity, kindness, what else? I'm just trying to think. Optimism. When we're like, this is who I choose to be, these are the things that I really value most about how I want to show up in the world, that actually it helps them ride out difficult situations better. But for any of you who are maybe in a leadership role or even from a parent perspective, people are looking to those in leadership roles to go, oh, have we got this? Because they're stressed out. I mean, what's happening? Are we all going to be okay? And leaders act as very much like an emotional barometer. And of course, if you're a parent, you are in the ultimate leadership role. And so those who are looking to us for guidance as the cue, how are we going to deal with that? When you're grounded, when you're really grounded in yourself and your ability to deal with what's coming, that acts as like a psychological safety net. It's like, okay, we don't know quite what the future holds, but, you know, this person, mum, dad, my boss, you know, they're like, hey, we're going to get through this. We're going to be okay. I know we'll be okay. And so for you to be really coming from that place and doing that, I'll just share that little diagram there. But one is focus on what's in your control, and two, aligning your story around that. Like, I've got this. We don't need to know all the answers. You don't need to know quite how you're going to handle June. You just need to know, okay, this is we're making the best decisions we can now with what we know now. And I mean, my family's spread US, Singapore, we're all Australian. We're like, okay, we were planning to all head back to Australia when my kids finish their academic school year in June. Will there be flights running? Will we be able to go back to Australia in June? Will we all have to individually isolate for 2 weeks in a hotel? I mean, I have no idea. There may be no planes flying. But I'm not focusing on that because honestly, who knows? I'll focus on that a little closer. Right now, we're all safe. So thinking about this for you, looking at what are activities you can do that help you get grounded in that self-certainty. For me, things like journaling, exercising, frankly, is a great way to relieve stress. Being out in nature, listening to music, playing music, meditating, you know, doing breathing. You may have already some of your favorite practices, but I think it's so important to just be able to stop and go, what is it that connects me to that part of myself that it's not the waves on the ocean, it's the still waters underneath? Because right now it's easy to be kind of pulled into all of the stormy seas on the top. We got to go deeper than that and go, okay, let's connect to that place within me that I know can handle it. And if you think back on your life till now, I'm guessing a lot of you have had some challenges. You've had 100% survival rate and you're here. And so you will survive this too. And sometimes when we go, I don't know if I'll cope, you've coped before, and you wouldn't be who you were today if you hadn't weathered those storms. So trust that you'll weather these ones as well. Which takes me to the next slide. Thanks, Ange. And I touched on this briefly a moment ago, and that is to really double down and be so intentional on what it is that helps to strengthen you. and you've got this, I have a chapter there on doing what strengthens our wings. And I'm kind of pulling from the Victor Hugo poem that the bird is on the branch, and even when the branch is kind of breaking beneath it, it still sings because its trust isn't in the branch. The trust is in its wings. And for us, if you knew that whatever happens, I can handle it, it allows you to still sing. It allows you to still have fun. It allows you to still smile. It allows you to get on with doing what it is you want to do in the best way you can do it now. And so prioritize those rocks. I share that. I'm sure you've heard of the rocks and the sand analogy. Now's the time to really double down on those things, those activities, the rituals and practices that help us bring our best selves, our bravest selves to what we're dealing with, to whatever the mess and shitstorm we've got going on right now. Like, okay, what is it will allow me to deal with all this better? And, you know, it was Abraham Lincoln who said, our natures are alike. It's our habits that separate us. And all of us can easily go to anxiety, to stress, to overwhelm. That's just the default that we will go to. That monkey brain, that's where we're going to it's what our instinctual response will be. So what is it that we need to do that taps into the best, you know, the strength that we have, our resilience, our resourcefulness, our creativity? And then in that place, you know, asking yourself, you know, right now, what would the bravest part of me want me to do right now? How does it see it? And being able to tap into that part of you that's like, you know what? It would probably, for me, write an article, you know, record a video. I've been doing daily videos, updating on my husband and sharing some thoughts on Facebook. And I don't usually do that, but I'm like, okay, for me right now, I'm going to get really on purpose. I mightn't be being paid for what I'm doing as much as I would ordinarily, but okay, I want to play from my strengths. What are my strengths right now? What is it that I get fueled by? I get really fueled by the work that I do. So I'm going to just do more of that. I'm going to double down on that. And in the midst of that, make sure I'm taking really good self-care. And when we do that, it actually expands our bandwidth for dealing with all of the other stuff. So too does practicing gratitude, you know, focusing on what helps you feel grateful and shifting out all the negativity of what's missing and what's wrong. So too does connecting in with other people. I know we're calling it social distancing. I wish they'd called it physical distancing, because really we need to be more socially connected than ever. And so for you, just being so deliberate in your social connection right now and connecting with people, prioritizing that, having your nightly, you know, wine o'clock with whoever. And I was talking to someone last night. She said, I started connecting with people that I never get round to seeing because we're all too busy in our ordinary lives. And so there's opportunities right now to be doing that, which, let's get on to the final slide there, Ange, which really brings me to really operating from a place, to me, I call it power. Power I define as our ability to affect change. And our ability to affect change around us begins with our ability to really affect change within us. And looking at this through the scope, through the lens of who we can be as change agents, who we can be as leaders, I believe all of us have a wonderful opportunity now to really step up and be leaders in our own way, in our own right, in our own families, in our own communities, and being the change we want to see in those around us. If everyone else is stressed out, not buying into that, and operating from a place of faith and not fear. And when I say faith, I'm talking about faith that you'll get through this, that there's good things that we can find in the middle of this, that we can come out the other side of this with wisdom that we didn't have, maybe with new skills that we didn't have. We're all learning to master Zoom right now, with a sense of connectedness to people around us. I look at it through the business lens, organizations having far more flexibility in their working arrangements because they've set people up to be more flexible. There's a lot of good things that can come from this. You know, necessity is the mother of invention. Like right now, people are going, how can I do things differently because I have to? But how can we then take all of that out when we come out the other side of this in ways that are better? And you know, we know from the research that when we're very focused on ourselves, it's very easy to kind of get into a state of self-pity or victimhood or resentment. So this is an opportunity right now to look around you and go, okay, how can I use this moment to be someone who helps other people. Get away from, just take the focus off your own immediate needs. I mean, you need to fill those, but then looking at and going, well, what is it that I can do right now that will help those around me? And I think when we operate from a place of not just about me, but about we, whether it's in your team, whether it's in your extended family or your community, beyond that, there's a lot of opportunities to do that. And so I know for me, looking for how can I find good in this, and recognizing that adversity introduces us to strengths and to resilience and to resourcefulness we may never otherwise have discovered. And how can we tap into that and use that in a way that's good for others? And it may all sound very altruistic, but I think back to my brother Frank. He had an accident 10 years ago that left him with paraplegia. And in the wake of that, I remember thinking at the time how he reframed it. I don't want to let this injury have the power to ruin my life. And it made me forevermore think in terms of how often do those of us whose legs work perfectly fine, even if you can't go too far right now, get focused on what we can't do and what we don't have and what's wrong and what's not fair versus what we can do and we do have. So don't get stuck in a mental wheelchair right now, thinking about all the things that aren't as you want. Think about, okay, what is it I can do and how can I make the very most of this moment in time that I'm in? And so with that, I think, Ange, we've probably hit the half hour, and if you want to move just to the next slide, I'm happy just to go on and take any questions that people may have as well.
Yes. So, well, first of all, before we get to some questions, so there have been a couple that have come up, but by all means, because we've had a few comments and people sharing what they're doing at home, where they are right now, but feel free to put some more questions in at the moment. I did also want to point out Margie's book, You've Got This, which is available now. And if you enjoyed this webinar, go and support Margie by buying her book as well. There's a lot more in it to take out of some of the points that she shared here. And I mean, it's just been published. And I have to say, I always feel for authors who are publishing their books just in these weeks at the moment. It's quite, I mean, for all of us. Yesterday, Georgie Dent and I, Georgie, our contributing editor on Women's Agenda, we were discussing the idea of the little disappointments that come up day to day that we're all facing. Particularly, you see those little kids facing those little disappointments at things that, of course, they don't matter in the scheme of people being sick and what's going on in our hospitals and what's happening to our economy and various things like that. But you do feel for your child who has missed out on a birthday party or various other little disappointment examples out there that we're all dealing with at the moment that hopefully, like you say, will ultimately make us a little bit more resilient out of this. And I mean, I look forward to thinking what might come out of the collective resilience that we might see out of this shared experience as well. So I did see there was a couple of comments that came up saying that, right now I actually feel okay. Am I in some kind of denial? Is something about to get really bad for me? Is it okay to feel okay right now?
It's great to feel okay. Isn't that interesting and I think, yes, it's totally okay to feel okay. And there's no problem. If you're feeling okay, that's brilliant. That's wonderful. I would say, remember how you're feeling right now. And because there may be moments that come up when you're not feeling okay. And so being able to kind of come back to the times when you do feel okay, that's fantastic. That puts you in a position to maybe be a source of calm for others that aren't feeling okay. And recognizing sometimes we can feel okay and then we don't feel okay and we can go up and down. So if you're feeling okay, fantastic. That's good. There's no problem then. And just use all of that positive space that you're in to have fun and make the most of the moment that you have right now.
Would you have any tips or ideas? I mean, it might extend from that feeling okay element, but how you can help inspire some courage in other people as well. I mean, it's one thing to look at yourself, but what you can maybe do for other people to help them find their own courage.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, firstly, just recognize, if you're in a conversation with them and they just want to talk about all of the bad, because the more we focus on what makes us afraid and anxious, the more afraid and anxious we become. So those people who are super anxious, they're spending a lot of their time and energy focusing on all of the bad. And so don't get pulled in and just spend an hour talking to them about all those things. So help them focus on, okay, what are the things right now you could be doing? I mean, maybe you could be out in your garden, or so helping them change where they're putting all their attention. What we focus on expands. Helping them recognize that even in their own language, because our words create our reality. So they're probably using language that's very catastrophic and very alarmist and very dramatic, and what a nightmare this is, that's only fueling all of that too. But I also think sometimes we have to set a boundary with people and say, hey, I don't want to talk about that anymore. I don't think it's serving you. I don't think it's serving me. Let's focus and find something, another conversational topic to focus on, and encourage them to focus on something. And, it might be doing some hobby or craft or something creative that they wouldn't usually do. But recognizing that where we're putting all of our attention, that's the reality then we create for ourselves.
Okay, so we do have a question here. It's coming anonymously. So this person says that they're highly sensitive and the uncertainty is completely overwhelming them. They said that they like your advice about being grounded, but have you got any advice for when the overwhelming feeling goes from like 1 to 10 in 3 seconds?
Yeah. My best advice is in those moments to just stop where you are and breathe. And just breathe. And like breath connects us to the present moment. Just notice your breath. And your mind's going to go out like bam, it's going to go back. When it does, just notice that. Like practicing mindful self-compassion right now. There's some wonderful meditations. Kristen Neff, I interviewed her for my Live Brave podcast last year, but there's some wonderful meditations to help. Sometimes I have to do 2 meditations before I get myself. When I've felt anxious, the first one just kind of gets me to a point that I can actually even really truly do the second one. But even just stopping and just noticing your breath, because when we breathe, it connects us to the present instead of going on, because all of the anxiety is the projected future that is causing that. So just coming back and just paying attention to breath. And I'm not a meditation teacher, and that's not my expertise, but there are a lot of people who are deep dive experts in that. But I can tell you that just if you simply stop for just a minute and just focus on your breathing, noticing where you're feeling that overwhelm in you, put your hand on that place, breathe into that place, that may just help get you down from that, 12 out of 10 to a 9 out of 10. And then there's other things you can do from that. And you might need to do that a lot. If you have to do that 10, 20 times a day right now, then that's what you have to do. But if the more recognizing that our brains, we have plasticity, the more often, and we can train our brains, and the more often that we practice these mindfulness techniques, the more often we reel in that fear and we come ourselves back to center, the better we get at it. We're literally strengthening neural pathways in the brain. So just recognizing the more you do that, the better you get at it.
Okay, so some of these tips will apply to that question, this coming question as well. But we spoke about what to do to try and inspire courage in other people. But how can you overcome and focus on your strengths and resilience when everyone around you might be feeling low? So this is somebody who's commented here saying that they're struggling with this, that the idea of trying to keep positive when obviously that feeling around you is so low. Yeah,
I get that. I totally understand. I would just say it's hard because we are creatures of our environment. So if you're at home right now and everyone around you is really flat and low, I get that that's hard to be impacted by that. I would just say even more important for you to really prioritize, find a space for yourself. If you have to lock yourself in your bedroom or your bathroom or whatever, for you to kind of come back and go, okay, what do I need to do for myself? So when I go back into that environment, I'm not being pulled down by their negativity all the time. And set some, and I know if it's in your home, it makes it harder because it's harder to kind of, at least at work you go, I'm going to go home at the end of the day and leave all of that toxicity behind or that negativity. But so you have to create some boundary in your own space. Otherwise, all that stuff around you will get in you. And maybe there's some requests that you can make of people to certain things you could ask them to stop doing. And maybe you need to also reach out to people who aren't people who pull you down. And I have, and you've got this, I talked about, find your uplift. Connecting with people who are going to lift you up. And, asking for help isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign that you want to stay strong. So for you, asking people around you to help you stay strong. For me, in the midst of my confinement, you know, people have dropped off coffees and said, what can I do? I'm like, oh, I would love a scented candle. Or people have been really, really terrific in wanting to support me over the last couple of weeks. But making sure you are connecting with those people who aren't pulling you down. If you've got those people you have no control over, fine. Be really deliberate in connecting with people who will lift you up.
Okay, there's a few questions here and they're coming in different question boxes. So some that are coming privately to me and some that I believe that everyone can see. But there are, I would say, a group around motivation. So one saying that they're working extended hours at the moment and trying it difficult to stay motivated and to motivate their team. Another saying that they're finding that they're spiraling and procrastinating a lot, struggling to create new routines for themselves and not finding the motivation. So any advice around motivation there?
Well, it's funny. I'll just show you. I created this little, well, I don't know if you can see it. It's a little chart for myself on, I think it was day 2 of my quarantine. I'm like, all right, I need to what are the things I'm going to do every day? What are my own little rituals that I'm going to make sure I'm doing every day? And it's like, do 2 planks. I mean, like, it wasn't so hard. Do 2 planks, do 20 sit-ups, do 20 push-ups. Because it's like, I know these things are going to help me just feel better. So physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally, we have to be really doing those things that will help us feel stronger. And when it comes to motivation, I get it. A lot of people, it's really easy to be demotivated right now. So what are the little things you can put in place? And it may be you give yourself a little chart and you tick your boxes when you get certain things done. You know, I'm often at home. If I'm not traveling, I've generally worked from home over the years anyway. So I'm, you know, always very deliberate on a daily basis. What are my top things I want to get done today? What are the top things I want to get done this week? In my own calendar, chunking blocks of time. And I get, if you've got kids around and life right now, you don't have the same sense of control over your day. But if you can put in a couple of blocks where, you know what, I need an hour and a half every morning to just free of distraction to do this. I mean, we're all in different situations here, but I encourage you to create some systems to motivate you. So that visual cues to help you stay motivated. Maybe you need a little reward at the end of the week. When I do this, I'm going to treat myself to this. But be really, really clear. It's like using the SMART goals. Specifically, what do you want to get done? How will you know that you've done it? How can you track your progress towards it? So for me, with my 14 days, no, I didn't do everything every day, but I was able to kind of go, you know what? I'm ticking the boxes most days. And so that was just a little visual cue for myself.
Yes, that's great. I've found that with the routines, because we are at home all day, I've actually found it easier somewhat to have a routine. I know that's not everyone's experience, but despite all the chaos, it feels like, I mean, even just at the moment in our situation in Sydney, Australia, you are able to go out to exercise. So there is a rule, you can go out and do your exercise. You're not allowed to sit around or anything, but you can go out and do your exercise. And it's sort of become this great motivation to actually go out and do your exercise, because it's your reason for being out there. Therefore, go out and exercise. So that's been a nice little addition to my days. It is.
And I want to just jump on that as well. I've heard some people saying, oh, I'm home all the time now. I'm not even having a shower. I haven't worn a bra for 5 days, you know, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, I've had a few days I haven't worn a bra as well. But I will say that for me, like this morning, I washed my hair and I put my makeup on. And yes, I knew I was going to see you. But I've been doing that every day, even when I'm not going to do a webinar, because I feel better when I wash my hair and I put a little bit of makeup on. Now, I'm not saying everyone cares about that, but I feel better when I do that. And I put on an outfit and I don't sit around in my pajamas all day just because I can. So I think, to your point, Ange, on routine, like don't treat the day like it's a proper day. Don't treat it like, oh, well, we're in, you know, this different weird time. I'm not doing any of that. No, I think it's even more important to get up, do your exercise, have a shower, get dressed, whatever, because it puts you in a different state of mind.
Okay, so there's a few more questions. Are you able to, Margie? I'll
I
share.
have all the time in the world. I'm in quarantine.
Okay, good, because I know that some of these, because I appreciate that also people are doing it tough. So some of these questions obviously will be difficult, and I know that people have difficult challenges that they're getting through and would love some tips on. So there's one here talking about somebody who says that they've lost their job just as the pandemic started. And, you know, obviously a lot of businesses have put their recruitment processes on hold. So how can they stay resilient and positive during this time when, I mean, that is obviously there's so much uncertainty there when it comes to careers and jobs and financial security.
Yeah, I get it. I feel similarly in a boat, not overly dissimilar to that. And one is I know that I will not go hungry. And so focusing in on, sometimes we kind of go, I've lost my job, and I know financially that can put people in a really hard place. And I know that there's different measures being put in place in terms of paying rent and paying mortgages now because people won't have money to pay for things. So looking immediately on being really smart, I mean, immediately we've looked at where are our expenditures, where can we cut back? So obviously being really smart about that is obviously a step one. But two, we don't know what the situation's going to be 6 months from now. You can just focus on what you know right now and be really smart as you can with where you are right now. And that's where I guess that faith, whatever happens, you will navigate those steps down the road as you have to navigate steps. And you will deal with that in the smartest way possible. And often we can get into this state of overwhelm by going, I don't have income coming in. Like I have, my income has been reduced a lot at the moment too, and have a lot of expenses with kids and going, okay, right now we're okay, we're safe. I mean, we're not in a situation where, I mean, I know we have the virus itself to be concerned about, but often what we're afraid of is other things. It's not getting sick with this virus. It's what if we lose our house and our business and that. And you know what? And if those things happened, you will deal with that too. But don't spend all of your fear on all of these, oh, well, what if this happens and what if? We don't know. You don't know. There's things you do know and there's things you don't know. So don't get caught dwelling on all that you don't know. Focus on what you do know right now and what can set you up right now in the best possible way. And I get financially, there's a lot of people in really tough situations. I know people who've lost businesses they've spent their lives building because suddenly they lost all of their clients in catering business and what have you. And so I get that that's hard. So how do you choose to show up? And coming back to that place of how do I choose to show up in this moment? And, you know, Viktor Frankl, who went through Auschwitz in the Nazi Germany, you know, he said people who gave up hope that their future could be good were the ones that ultimately perished. And those who maintained hold of hope that actually life can be good again, that they would get through, were the ones that found strength in themselves that others didn't. They drew on like this inner grit to get through the brutal conditions that they were in. Very few of us are in conditions that would be remotely like that. And if you just keep hope, you will get through this. Somehow out the other side, we don't know how yet, but you'll come out the other side of this. It's a way to help you weather the storm right now. You know what? We'll get through it. You don't have to know exactly how. You just have to know that you will.
There's one question here which I think is a really great question to end on, and it's something that I've been thinking a lot about as well, and I've actually enjoyed these questions. It's about the how are you question, which I've enjoyed having those conversations with different people because I feel like right now it enables us to be quite vulnerable and open up and really share how we're really feeling. But I think that this is a really great one in the sense that she asked, you know, how do we respond to those how are you questions? You know, every work meeting can be starting that way, or every conversation that you're having with family or friends can start that way, obviously with good intentions, but it can start to spiral panic conversations. And then the conversation being repeated multiple times a day, it's understanding how that can be really draining on your energy as you go. So this question is saying they don't want to dismiss it, but any ideas on how to deal with those well-intentioned questions?
Yeah, I think obviously it's important for us to be real about the truth of our lives, but we don't have to be real about the truth of our lives with every single person. And so, I mean, I have a lot of people asking me now, how are you going? You know, and sometimes I'm fine. You know, I'm like, I don't want to get into it. I'm fine. And yes, fine isn't great. I'm not like woohoo, but there's other people, and I think we have to choose who it is we want to be really truthful with and really be vulnerable with. And we need to be real with people, but we don't need to be real with all people. And I think we need to set boundaries on our energy right now. You know, I really believe we have to take 100% responsibility for the energy we let in, and we have to take 100% responsibility for the energy we put out. So it may be that you have to draw some boundaries on you answering that question. And it's okay that you don't tell everyone exactly how you are in every moment of the day. And it's also okay that you don't spend all your time listening to everybody else, as they might be, you know, there may be some people you have to set more boundaries with than other people too. And that's okay, because right now, taking care of ourselves, and is that putting on your own oxygen mask first, but our own like spiritual, emotional oxygen mask. I got to make sure I'm good, because I'm not good to anyone if I'm feeling depleted, because I'm constantly in conversations that leave me exhausted. And so I think we've got to be just very clear in setting some boundaries for ourselves. And it's not about rejecting other people. It's about doing what we can for ourselves so that we can be strong for ourselves and then other people. Yeah.
Absolutely. And Tracy just had a little tip there that might help as well. And that's, instead of asking, how are you? You could ask, what is happening for you today, which is great. Thank you for sharing that, Tracy. So Margie, thank you so much for your time today. And thank you everybody for listening in and participating. And we are recording this, so you can check back on it, or you can go and share it with other people that you think might be interested. So we will get it up on Women's Agenda in the next day or so. So thank you, Margie. Remember, that's Margie's book there that's on the screen there. You've got this just published, obviously written before any of this was going on, but very much relevant to this moment. So thank you so much, Margie. Where can people purchase your book?
Look, it's in airport bookstores everywhere, but no one's in an airport right now. So it's you can get it on any online bookseller. In Australia, obviously Booktopia and everywhere, but on Amazon, it's wherever good books are sold. And I have information obviously on the website, the URL's up there, but you can pretty much buy it anywhere. It's also an Audible audiobook, and it's also an ebook if you're a Kindle user as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you, Margie. And thank you again to everybody listening. And if you stay up to date with Women's Agenda, if you do receive our daily newsletter, we will share further webinars that we're doing. We're really keen to try and get out as much content for free as possible. So if you do have ideas, you can also share them with us as well. So thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.